All right, we'll go ahead and get started since it is 2:03. So thank you everyone for being here today. I know it's a busy week with midterms and everything, so appreciate you all attending and participating for our workshop. My name is Gabby. I am a student assistant for the career services team.
And my name is Jackie, and I also am a student assistant for the career services team at the iSchool.
Yes. All right, so these are the things that we'll be going over today. We'll go over some in basics, like what is networking, who can you network with, and then we can talk more about cold messaging, and then virtual versus in-person networking, and then informational interviews, elevator pitches, and then at the end, we're gonna go into some breakout rooms for more hands-on experience with networking. So let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, so let's get started by defining what networking is. So it is a process where you would build professional or personal relationships through meaningful conversations where you can exchange advice about positions, career paths, employers, industry trends, and just about anything in general. And you get to become more involved and well connected within your professional and personal communities. And most importantly, you might be able to hear about opportunities on the hidden job market or before they are even posted to the job boards. And just a quick fact about networking is that 70 to 80% of jobs are filled through networking and not through the hectic application process. And so some common myths or misconceptions about networking include, it is too intimidating and you need to be an extrovert to be good at networking, when in reality is that networking is more about building one-to-one connections and not about being the most outgoing person in the room. So forming more meaningful relationships with a small handful of people can be more worthwhile than speaking to everyone in the room. And the second misconception is that networking is not a good use of one's time. So while networking does take time and require some strategic planning, and the positive effects of networking might not show right away, it will definitely pay off in the long run and is always better to start early and create some meaningful connections. And the third misconception is that networking is only for building professional relationships only. So not every connection you make has to be for professional gain. So networking is really great for building mentor/mentee relationships and friendships with like-minded people. And the last misconception is that you only need to network when you're looking for a job. So the truth is that you can network at any point in your career, and we actually encourage you to keep networking throughout. And this is because networking is about making connections that can benefit both parties professionally and personally. So this relationship can lead to, new job opportunities, but it can also benefit you in your current position by providing, new information, learning new skill sets, and etc. that will be beneficial for you and your career. So who can I network with? And here are some examples of groups and people that you can reach out to and start expanding your network. And it could be through your friends or family, the UW and iSchool community, which includes peers, faculty, staff, and alumni, working professionals at companies that you're interested in working at in the future, and just anyone whose journey, accomplishments, or stories that interest you and that you want to learn more about them. And once you have identified a person that you want to reach out to, try to identify why you're interested in reaching out to them. Is it because of something that they did, or is it because of something that they said? Something that they have in common with you? So yeah, just try to brainstorm these kind of ideas so you have a topic that you can start out with. And when you have topics that you want to talk about with this person, try to find the best way to contact them. And some common methods of communication include LinkedIn messaging, emails, and reaching out for coffee chats. And now that you have topics in mind and a platform to reach out on, it is time to craft your introductory message. So these messages will most likely be the first thing others will receive from you. And from there, they will determine if you're worth being added to their network and if they should invest time to create a professional relationship with you. So you'd want to create a good first impression, but you also want to keep your first message short and concise. So I would suggest try to keep it within 2 to 3 paragraphs long, and some components that you should include would be, self-introduction, how you found out about them, and you should also express your interest in why you're interested in learning more about them and what advice that they have for you. And lastly, just try to make a request, such as, like scheduling for a coffee chat or a quick Zoom meeting and etc. And just a quick side note, if you're reaching out through a person on LinkedIn that you haven't connected with, your connection request message must be less than 300 characters long. So make sure that you keep an eye out on the word count and make sure it is short and concise. And here's an example of an introductory message, and I'm just going to read it over really quickly. So, dear Sam, my name is Jackie, and I'm a UW student pursuing a degree in informatics. My long-term goal is to move into a user experience designer role, and I'm really interested in the work you're doing with Microsoft and would love to gain any advice that you have. Would you be willing to meet with me for a 20-minute Zoom conversation? I have a flexible schedule and can meet whenever is convenient for you. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you. And then closing. So this example message was short and concise, where I briefly mentioned who I was and what my professional goals were and why I wanted to reach out. And most importantly, I asked them if they would be interested in having a quick continuing conversation to tell me more about themselves. And yeah, let's give you guys a minute to digest, and don't worry about needing to get all the notes down, as this info session is being recorded, so you can always revisit these materials later at your own pace. And in later slides, Gabby will share some more details and tips about the coffee chats and formal informational interviews in just a little bit. So I'll give you guys like 30 seconds to look at the message, to digest a little bit first. Sounds good. I will move on then. So now I'd like to kind of transition into networking virtually in a pandemic. So while the pandemic has been really challenging and shifted the way we live, go to work and then go to school, it has also opened opportunities for us, in the working and networking space. So now you can look for, remote jobs across the states or even outside the country that you probably never would have considered if it wasn't because of the shift. And you can certainly expand your professional network so it is not just limited to the area that we live in, such as like the greater Seattle area. And I would highly encourage you all to use Handshake and other tools such as LinkedIn and Indeed to explore opportunities and events that may interest you. And however, I would spend more time on Handshake though, because it has a lot more resources tailored for UW students. And you only have free access to it now until I think 1 year after you graduate from UW. And not only that, a lot of the college career fairs and workshops are now being hosted on the platform. So you should definitely explore more on there. And the workshops are great opportunities for professional development as well as expanding your network.
Awesome. So as you all know, networking on the screen can look a little bit different than in person, but there's definitely still some overlap that you might kind of see. So we're going to dive into some tips on how you can make the most out of your networking experiences virtually, since a lot of events are being converted to virtual events rather than in person. So the first tip is dressing professionally. So similar to in person, you want to be dressed professionally. You should at least aim to look professional from at least the waist up, but wearing an entire outfit can be pretty nice too. Just a reminder, you aren't just dressing for the people you're talking to, but you're also dressing for yourself. And it is a bit cliche to say, but you should definitely dress for success. Wearing something that you feel confident in will help you just feel more confident as you network with people you don't know. The next point that I want to make was looking at the webcam to mimic eye contact. So one of the downsides of virtual networking is that it can be kind of hard to portray yourself truly as you would in person. So eye contact can make things feel a lot more personal between you and the person you're speaking to. So you can try looking at your webcam instead of the screen, just because that shows that looks more like eye contact rather than you looking at the screen. It can also let them know that you're listening and not looking at anything else on your screen. And so yeah. So next thing is using a virtual background when you're in these networking environments. So while it is probably the best just to find a room that's clear of any distractions, that's obviously not always feasible for different situations. So if you can't find a space to do this event or interview, try to find some kind of minimalist background or just blur your background so that the person that you're speaking to can really focus on you rather than anything else happening behind you. So now one of the upsides of virtual networking is that you can take notes. This can be super helpful when you're conducting informational interviews, which I will talk more about pretty soon, or just other networking events. You do want to give kind of a heads up to whoever you're speaking to that you are taking notes, just like a quick thing at the beginning of your meeting. That way they don't think that you're distracted by something on your screen or anything like that as you're typing out your notes. And the next thing is less of a tip, but more kind of like a side note. As I mentioned earlier, it is kind of hard to portray yourself on video versus in person. So with that being said, there's a lot less emphasis on body language. So if you're someone who uses a lot of hand gestures as you talk, which is me, you don't have to restrict yourself really. I just wanted to make note of that, just so you know that hand gestures aren't as distracting and the person can really focus on what you're saying virtually as you speak to them. And then moving on to our next topic, which is informational interviews, also known as coffee chats. These are an awesome way to get to know about a certain career path or company that you're interested in. As Jackie mentioned, you can use sites like LinkedIn or Handshake to find professionals that you want to connect with. Don't be scared to cold message folks. A lot of people are super happy to chat about their career path and how they got to where they were, because at some point they were in that position that you were in. So the screenshot on the right-hand side is a cold message I sent to a chief finance officer. I really leaned on the fact that on common ground, the fact that we both went to UW, and ultimately he was super happy to talk to me. So don't be scared to shoot your shot when you're sending these cold messages. The worst response I've ever gotten from sending one is no response at all. So it really isn't too bad. Once you do get an informational interview, though, you can continue to develop your relationship you had with this professional. Additionally, you can also tap into their network once you've gotten to know them more and kind of like establish that relationship. And so in general, informational interviews can be a great tool to really learn about the careers and industries, companies you're interested in, but can act as a stepping stone to further grow your professional network. So before your informational interview, after you've set it all up and everything like that, you should definitely take the time to really figure out what questions you want to ask them. So the first step before you come up with any questions is to really understand what exactly you want to get out of this conversation. Try to craft a goal that core anchor that you want to go back towards, and then you can craft your questions around that. So usually when I prepare for an informational interview, I try to aim for about 5 to 6 questions, and that's usually more than enough for a 30-minute conversation, especially when as the conversation progresses, you'll probably have new questions that come up as the conversation goes. And I try to build my questions to really understand the full scope. So I like to ask, how they got to where they are now and their path with career exploration. And then I kind of like to know what they're doing in the present day, like what their day-to-day looks like, as well as overarching responsibilities, the good and the bad of their job. And then finally, I like hearing their advice on that they could give me in their position now. So these are just a few questions that you can ask. I would also take, obviously, the time to research the person you're talking to about their role and their company. Then you can tailor maybe 1 or 2 questions from your research. And next, after the informational interview, after you conducted it and everything, I always try to end the conversation with some kind of means to kind of stay connected. So usually my go-to is saying something like, I'd love to keep in touch. Can I potentially add you on LinkedIn? Or if I have more, or if I've already added them on LinkedIn, I could say like, if I have more questions, do you mind if I shoot you an email about it? So some things like that. You can also say things like, I'd like to learn more about this topic. Is there anyone you know I can talk to about this? Or if you are interested maybe in a role in their company, if they are hiring for one, you can always say something like, I noticed that there was this position open at your company. I'm interested in applying. Do you have any tips on applying for your company? So when you're entering these informational interviews, you should never expect, to get some kind of referral or anything. This should be really for your curiosity to learn more about the professional. But sometimes by asking things like asking for tips about applying to the company, this can put you on their radar, or they can connect you to people who are directly working with the hiring process. But after your conversation ends, be sure to showcase your gratitude and reiterate your thanks in your follow-up email at the end. And afterwards, maybe a couple years pass by too, don't be afraid to follow up, share any updates about what you've been up to or anything directly relating to the conversation you had. So moving on from informational interviews, we're going to talk a little bit more about elevator pitches, or the tell me about yourself question and how to answer that. So I like to think about this elevator pitch as kind of a loose outline of a self-introduction, and it's a great thing to have at any networking event or an interview setting. So there's a lot of different ways you can actually structure your tell me about yourself spiel, but this is the format that we will talk about today. So you want to start off with the present, really telling people who you are, what you're doing in your life right now. Maybe you're a student, maybe you have a role in a company, something like that. And then you want to kind of talk a little bit, highlight some experiences in the past that you're especially proud of or that are relevant to whoever you're talking to. And then finally, you want to talk about some hopes, or not finally, but you want to move into the future and talk about hopes that you have for the future. And then finally, you want to end the pitch with a question to keep the conversation going. And you should aim for about 30 to 60 seconds of this speech. So I have an example that I can read out. This is what I would probably loosely say. So I would say, hello, I'm Gabby. I'm a senior at the University of Washington, studying marketing and information systems, along with minoring in data science. I've had several marketing internships focusing on social media management and developing marketing strategies. This past summer, I interned at Tableau as a brand marketing intern, where I supported their future and ongoing campaigns. I consider myself an aspiring tech marketer, so I hope to stay in this industry for my early career. I'm interested in your company's values and work. Could you tell me more about it? So this is probably something I would say maybe at a job interview or something, but typically I won't memorize this whole word for word, this spiel, but maybe more memorize like a loose outline of what you want to say. That way it could be more versatile depending on what situation you're using that elevator pitch. So maybe it's more conversational in a career fair setting, but it might be more structured in an interview setting. So things to think about. So right now, we're actually going to take a minute or so to kind of craft our own elevator pitches, which we will actually be using in the breakout room. So go ahead and follow this format here. Or you can always unmute if you have any questions as well, but we'll give a few minutes to kind of craft one out. All right, we're gonna go ahead and keep going now. So let's keep moving forward. So now that we have that done, we've actually finished the presentation piece of this workshop, and we're going to do some hands-on networking with breakout rooms. So these are the things that we will be doing in the breakout room. So now that you have your elevator pitch, we'll put you into groups so you can practice them. Don't be too worried about having the perfect pitch. Obviously, everyone is here to kind of improve on networking and things like that. So this is definitely a safe space to make mistakes. After you're done with that, get to know each other, maybe talk about how you would approach a cold message and things like that. And of course, at the end, try to connect with each other, whether it's LinkedIn or sharing contact information, things like that. So let's go ahead and set up these breakout rooms. Hi, Aurora. Hi, Vreedy. How was your breakout rooms?
Hey, it was good. We have a basic elevated pitch ready. Maybe we'll work on that more.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Did you both have any questions or anything about networking right now?
Actually, I had a question, which is like we recently had a career fair in high school, right? And it's like I did talk to the recruiters or some team members of those companies, and also I also connected with them on LinkedIn, right? But what happens is they give us information about the position and the team while we talk to them in 10 minutes. But what am I supposed to, after I connect with them on LinkedIn, what am I supposed to do after that? Like, do I have to send message again? And if I do, what should be the message? Not sure about that.
Yeah, so yeah, if you are interested in like whoever you spoke to, I would encourage you to maybe message them again. It kind of depends what exactly, I guess, why you want to reach out. Maybe a good stepping stone if you want to learn more about like the company or like the specific role, you could set up a time for them to have like that coffee chat and like talk more one-on-one with them about maybe the hiring process, what you could do to stand out as a candidate, things like that. It all depends on their availability though. So you could always ask those questions within the email as well, and maybe they can answer like that. But that will still provide you an opportunity to build that relationship with the professionals you talk to. I don't know, Jackie or Bev, if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, so just to reiterate what the question was for the other room that just got in. So a student was asking about like recently going to a career fair event and speaking with a recruiter, but not really sure what to like after connecting on LinkedIn and stuff, not knowing how to follow up, do a follow-up message and not knowing what to message the recruiter. So in my opinion, I would definitely first thank them for hosting at the career fair and being there to give out a brief information session talking about like potential opportunities at their companies. So I would thank their time for being able to do that, as well as doing some following up questions, whatever questions that you may have about that company, whatever you want to learn more about the company, either it's the recruiter themselves or about the company in general. Like, what do you like about the company? Some tips and tricks for me to stand out in this application pool, etc. So, does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense actually. And one more thing, like tips and tricks and everything. If I do ask them, and they do not reply for like 2-3 days, so should I again send the same message or keep messaging them until they reply, or should I leave it and not bother them after that?
Yeah, that might be. So typically what I do is I wait maybe a day or so. Um, Recruiters are super busy because their inbox is definitely flooded with like lots of emails for students reaching out and things like that. So I would give it maybe like the end of the week or something, or maybe even on Monday if you haven't heard from them at all, Monday or Tuesday, I would follow up just saying like, hi, I just wanted to follow up on my last message, but if they don't respond after that follow-up message, I would just not keep adding on to their inbox.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And I would also do schedule sends. So I would strategize on what times that what times during the day would be best for them to see your message the best. So like I typically do it in like either mornings or afternoon times when when they start their work, or during when they come back from lunch, during those kind of times, such that either your messages don't get lost in a bunch of
Correct.
emails, or just like make it easier for them to like get access to your messages. So I would strategize on planning on what times would be best to send those messages out. And thankfully, I know that Gmail has like Google or other I don't know if other mailing platforms has schedule send features,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
know Gmail has that. I don't really know if LinkedIn has that though, but I'll just keep an eye on the time, and etc.
yeah. Makes sense. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? We do have a couple more minutes left. I think the workshop ends at 45, so we're open to taking any other questions. Was there anything in your elevator pitches that you all saw could use improvement, or how did your breakout rooms go as well?
Oh, hi. I have a question, and
Mhm.
it's regarding the questioning. Should I try to like tailor my question to the person I'm like talking to, or should it be a very generalized question that like they can easily answer
Yeah,
if
so
I'm
is
doing
that
like elevator
mhm.
pitches?
For the elevator pitch at the very end? Or is it for informational interviews?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh, well, both would work.
okay, yeah. So for informational interviews, I would say I do a balance between like doing some overall questions that I typically reuse across different informational interviews, especially like getting to know their day-to-day, overarching responsibilities, things like that. But I do want to tailor like a couple questions, maybe like one or two questions from your research that will also indicate to like the professional you're speaking with that you took the time to research their company, their role, and that you're super prepared for this informational interview that you're going towards. So yeah, just a balance between like some broader questions as well as more narrow focused and more research thought out questions is a good thing to have as well. And of course, like I said, like questions might come up in the conversation as well. So yeah, it definitely depends on where the conversation takes you. And then the question at the end of your elevator pitch, you can definitely have like a go-to question. So you can have a go-to question that you like to use if you want to keep the conversation going. Sometimes I like to throw the tell me about yourself question back at whoever I'm talking to as well. So like I give my spiel and then like, and I'd love to get to know more about you. Could you tell me more about yourself? But if you do have like something you're really looking forward to when you're speaking to them, like again, the example here was like, what are or can you tell me more about like what values your company has or things like that? You can definitely go for that as well. So it depends on, I guess, how you want to craft it and how the conversation is going to.
And it really, yeah, I would like to follow up on that. It really depends on what kind of relationship you want to have with the person you're talking to, right? If you want to establish like kind of like getting advice from a person that you really like admire or really want to like learn from, I would say definitely craft as much like personal kind of like questions about like asking how like their day-to-day looks like, what are their challenges, what are their biggest achievements doing some type of work at a certain type of company. So not only will you gain insight about, like that company that you want to work for in the future, you also like kind of like connect with this person on a more personal level where you guys can, exchange a lot more information with one another. And people connections like networks like professionals really like talking about themselves. So definitely don't be afraid of like asking personal questions, and they can easily just like say that they're not comfortable if they like really don't want to share about their personal stories. But most of the times, professionals are really more than happy to share their own success stories, achievements, and like to share their experiences with you guys. So whereas, if you are just like interested in learning about what the company is like, instead of just like learning more about the person, then you would probably ask questions like how Gabby phrased it, like just asking about like the company values, their goals, their vision, and etc. So those could be more broad. And it is really flexible. You can use these types of questions in different situations, like at career fairs or, like just on LinkedIn cold messaging. And it is really flexible, and it really depends on what kind of relationships you are seeking with these kind of like connections, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're about time. We could probably answer maybe one more question if anyone has any. Feel free to unmute or raise your hand if you do. If not, well, thank you all again for being here. We'll send a follow-up email with the recording as well as some resources, but we appreciate your participation and your time today with us. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.